Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Roger's Tech Talk. In this episode, we're going to talk about making your garage door smart. Now, if you go online, you search a lot of articles, you'll find pretty much most of them are talking about using a relay like a Shelly or a Go control to make your garage door smart. Be able to control it from HomeAssistant over the internet. The thing is though, most modern garage doors, these solutions will not work with them. Modern garage doors have a system called Security Plus 2.0, which stops conventional relays from allowing you to control your garage door. Thankfully, there's one project on the internet that's available that allows you to control your Security Plus 2.0 garage. That project is ratgdo by Paul Wieland. Thankfully, I was lucky enough to talk to the author, Paul, and get a behind the scenes look of how the solution actually works.
Yeah, my name is Paul Wieland, and I am the creator of this ratgdo shield for controlling Chamberlain LiftMaster garage door openers. And it was something that I kind of couldn't find a solution for. It motivated me to build a solution for my own use. And then I had so much invested in it, I decided I better try to sell it and see if anyone else would also benefit or would be interested in it. I mean, and certainly there are a lot of people in the same boat as me.
I was definitely in the same boat as Paul. When my garage door motor died after 15 years and I had to get a new one, I first tried to connect my existing Go control system to it, but it didn't work. I asked Paul if he could explain it a little bit deeper why my Go control and other traditional relays won't work with Security Plus 2.0 garage doors.
For decades, garage door openers had two wires that came down from the motor to the wall, and there was a doorbell wired to it. And the doorbell is just a switch that shorts those two wires together momentarily. And when the garage door opener would detect that circuit was shorted, it would toggle the door, either open or closed. And they were really easy to interface with for home automation. It was an excellent, very simple, excellent solution that worked. And there are a lot of products out there that can work with that off the shelf stuff. Insteon, years and years and years ago, the company Insteon made an IO Link product that you could wire in, and you just wired it to the contacts, and then you could have a button on your anywhere, toggle your door, and it would light up when the door was open. And it wasn't cheap, but it was pretty cool. And then you get later on things like Shelly and Go Control and stuff like that came out that allow you to control the door through that same interface. So then I've had a number of garage doors in my career as a homeowner, garage door openers, and they all work that way. And I just assumed that was going to be the norm forever. And I went and put an addition on my house and bought 5 brand new garage doors and found work. And I was infuriated. So what they've done is they've encrypted the signal. There's a different number, a different rolling code it's in an encrypted 19-byte code that's sent by the wall control that you put on your wall when you click the button. It's sent to the opener, and the opener will not accept repeated codes. So you can't even record the code that was sent and send it again. It won't accept it. So you have to know how to generate those codes for the various commands, whether you want to turn the light on or off or open the door or whatever the other buttons are on the wall control. And so there's literally no way you can interface with these door openers unless you buy into Chamberlain's hardware. And they call it an encrypted rolling code, and it makes a lot of sense for a wireless remote where somebody can be listening to you can record the signals being sent by the wireless remote that you put in your car. And right. That's a problem if you can replay that code and the door opens, because it's really easy to do. So long time ago, they came up with rolling codes so that it would prevent that replay attack avenue. And for whatever reason, I think we know what the reason is, but they introduced that to the wireline control, which is ridiculous because the wireline is inside your house. So yeah. The only way you have access to it is to actually be in the building already. So anyway, long story short, I think it was done purely out of their motivation to lock people into buying into their ecosystem and having to use their cloud solution, the My2 solution, to interface with something that you bought. And I have a strict no cloud policy in my house.
Now you're thinking, Roger, why do I need a solution like this? My garage doors already has a smart system, MyQ, that allows me to control it from my smartphone. Sadly, these systems are only cloud-based and there's no local implementation. If you watch any of my other videos, you know how important it is to me and to many other people in the community that you're able to control your smart devices over your local network and no reliance on a cloud service. I got rid of all my Google devices a couple of years ago just because your Google speaker can't work without an internet connection. If you want to stream to it locally, it's sort of worthless at that point.
The problem with MyQ, right? And maybe like the motivation for making this project and why I'm not in favor of these types of services. It's like I bought a garage door opener. I expect it's going to last a couple decades. I mean, my other door openers are really old, or were really old, and it's not a device that I want to throw away in 5 years or 10 years. And with the solution from the OEM, you're dependent on them keeping that infrastructure alive. And at some point, they're going to decide it's not profitable, or the next best thing is coming out, or they could get hacked. I mean, there's all kinds of things that could go wrong. But at a certain point in time, companies are motivated and are operated by income and by revenue. And if they're not charging you for it, then what's their incentive to keep that service alive 10 years, even 5 years from now? I don't know the exact business model or what their case is, but it's just not something I want to have to depend on. And then on top of that, even if all of that remains well and good, you still have connectivity issues. I mean, there's a lot of threads on the community for HomeAssistant where MyQ becomes unavailable, and then you basically just have to wait available again, and then you can control your door.
Before setting up the system, it's really important to understand all the different components involved. First, you have an ESP8266 microcontroller. This is where the code that ratgdo is made of, where this runs. To allow this component to be connected to your garage door, the ESP device is connected to what's called a shield. So this is where the wires that connect to your garage door are located. And lastly, of course, you actually have the firmware itself, which gets loaded on the ESP device via web installer. First, go over to the ratgdo GitHub page, scroll down and go to the github.io page. From there, you'll find the link to go to the web-based installer flash tool. From there, you'll choose what version, so hopefully you're using the latest version, 2.0 board. You'll click connect. As long as your ratgdo ESP device is plugged into your computer, you'll see it from the list, and then you'll choose install ratgdo. Be sure to click the erase device button to start from clean. The installation will take a few minutes. At first, I'm going to start off just erasing anything that's on the ESP device and then go for the whole installation process. Once that's completed, it will ask you for your Wi-Fi network and password. Be sure to choose a 2.4 gigahertz network. 5 gigahertz isn't supported on the ESP device. Once your Wi-Fi network is set up, you're going to click connect. It will connect to your Wi-Fi network, and from there, you'll be able to go to the web-based page on the ESP device and set up your initial configuration. Here, you're going to choose a unique name, a web-based password if you want to go back to this web-based control panel. You're going to give it an IP address. By default, it's going to use DHCP, and then you can also configure your Wi-Fi information here. If you plan on using this with HomeAssistant or another service that supports MQTT, you're going to need to type in your MQTT broker here and give it a prefix topic. By default, ratgdo supports HomeAssistant auto discovery, so there's nothing that you really need to do except install the correct MQTT server and you should be good. Also, be sure to choose the rolling code option so it will work with your garage door. Once you do this and you go into HomeAssistant, you'll see the device automatically in your list of devices and you'll be able to control your garage door. Pretty simple. One of the potential issues that come up when installing this is plugging the wires into the wrong place. You can plug the wires into the wrong place on the shield itself or potentially on the garage door. If you do think you have everything wired up correctly, the most important thing is to look at the web-based console for this and determine whether you're seeing the logs from the garage door itself. If you're still having wiring problems, bring your laptop into the garage, hook it up to the ratgdo with a USB cable, Going to the ratgdo website, you can go to the same web-based installer that you use to get the firmware on the device. Click connect, choose the ratgdo device, and instead of clicking the install option, you're going to click logs in console. From here, you'll have a web-based console, which if you're using either the button on your garage door wall or remote clicker, once you do that, you should start to see information in the logs if everything is working fine. If you're a fan of ESP Home, be sure to check out the ratgdo fork that provides native ESP Home integration with HomeAssistant. So this is instead of the basic MQTT integration the original mainline ratgdo integration offers. The ESP Home also offers a web-based console, so you can see your garage door opening and closing and do debug logging there. It also provides an interface for you to open your garage door from the website itself. Integrating HomeAssistant with the ESP Home fork of ratgdo is very simple. It will be auto-discovered by HomeAssistant and appear in your device list. Once it's there, you can go to it and you'll have a multitude of different entities available that is slightly different from the mainline ratgdo integration. You'll be able to see motion sensors, obstruction, and you'll be able to see the number of times your garage door motor is open and closed, and the open and door sensor here is a little bit different also. Once I got everything with ratgdo working correctly, I decided to make sure I wanted to keep the device safe, and I purchased a box that's mounted to the ceiling next to the garage door motor. From there, I nicely packed all the wires into the box and installed a ratgdo device inside. While the project may seem simple and is fairly easy to set up, behind the scenes, it took over a year to get this off the ground.
The better part of a year. And the reason is, so there is no out there for this. There are no other solutions available. There's a project, there's a piece of hardware you can buy, which is a factory LiftMaster button with wires soldered to it. So
Right.
you're allowing your relay or whatever button you want to short out the button that's on the wall. But it's not a real solution. It doesn't, it's a hack really. It's just a hack or a workaround, whatever you want to call it. And so my approach was, well, I need to figure out how this button, the circuit board and this button, the microcontroller that's on that circuit board, what is it doing? How's it generating these codes? What's the communication look like? So I bought a signal analyzer. They're cheap. Anyone interested in doing something like this, like analyzing signals or trying to decode what's going on with low voltage signals, it's pretty approachable because the hardware is only like $20, and plug it into your computer, wire it up, and then there's some free software. PulseView, SIGROC PulseView it's a little rough around the edges, but it's an amazing tool because it records and displays that signal, and they have decoders built into it, so you can try all various different UARTs, different baud rates. There's I don't know, dozens and dozens of decoders that are available out of the box. You can write your own also. So it was a matter of like reverse engineering. What was the signal that it was being sent? And that was the first step. After I figured out that it's a serial UART connection over 12 volts on one wire, it's a little funky because there's usually serial is 2 wires, but this is on one wire. And that one wire is also providing power to the button. So they really like got their mileage out of the wiring. Then I could see that it was a code that changed every single time you controlled the door. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I got to get the firmware off of the STM8 chip that's on this wall control. So there's an STM8 microcontroller, really simple, basic microcontroller, and I won't get into the gory details, but you can get a programmer for that. You can try to download the firmware off of it. You can run it through a decompiler. They were read protected, so I couldn't actually get the firmware off of my button. I had to set up. Somebody figured out how to glitch these things where you give it weird voltage pulses while it boots, and it will skip over the read protection. So
Man.
That once and to work and to get the firmware off of the button or off of the SDMA chip. And then after I got that, I didn't know assembler. I had to learn assembler, taught myself how that works. I know the basics of it, but I can't write a program in assembly. That's very low level and not something I've ever had to do before. So I had to reverse engineer that and actually transcribe the whole thing into JavaScript. I wrote a JavaScript program which emulated the button, and it could predict. At that point, I could figured out the memory addresses where the rolling code counter is stored, the various routines it used to generate the different numbers that are used, and then like kind of obfuscated together to make the code. And I got to a point where I had a program that could generate the next code. The problem is that program wasn't original. It's, the software that's on that SDM8 is copyrighted by Chamberlain. You can't redistribute it. You can't share it, or you're going to open yourself up to a lawsuit. So I, at that point, decided that the best way forward was to just generate all the codes and put a code database in the, I skipped ahead. Let me back up one step. So after having done that, I wondered what happened if I was to reset the memory on the SDM8 on the wall button. So I reset it and put it back to its original counter. So now it's going to replay counters. I was thinking, if your wall button dies and you buy a new one and hook it up, how does it synchronize with that button? Then it turns out that it sends a series of commands to the door opener to synchronize, and it will synchronize that code. So version 1.0 of this software that I wrote just sent that synchronization code with every command. So it's just every time you told it to open your door, or turn the light on, or lock, or whatever, it was sending a command as if it was a brand new button, followed by the next available code to open the door. And it worked great with my openers. And so I started giving that to people and found out that really early Security Plus 2.0 openers, it wasn't working with them. They once and it wouldn't work again. And come to find out, so I wound up buying one of these openers off eBay. I found an old logic board online, and I bought it. And I have a test mule on my desk, so I got it all hooked up and I could test against it. And come to find out, it just will not work unless you factor garage door opener. It won't work. And so at that point, I was like, okay, I have to port this JavaScript program I wrote to C and have it generate these codes in an original way where I'm not infringing on someone's copyright. In the meantime, I had been trying to contact this guy, Clayton Smith, who wrote Sec Plus. It's a library on GitHub that works with the over-the-air rolling codes. It can read and generate them. But they're different codes than what's used on the wireline. They're different length, and they're grouped differently. And I couldn't make heads or tails of whether in my mind, I'm thinking they got to be very similar. They have to be doing the same. Why would they have two implementations of this? But a lot of things that I tried with his library, I could not get it to generate the right format or the right series of codes that I'd recognized. And I tried to reach out to him a number of times, and it took a while. It took probably 8 months before all of a sudden I guess maybe he just didn't have time or something. But all of a sudden he comes back and he's like, yeah, here's how I just put a patch in there and it generates wireline codes. And I was like, wow, that's excellent. So original. He's an extremely brilliant guy. And he helped me out a lot because it got away from having to have this concept of having like 60,000 codes pre-stored in the flash memory of the device and playing them from basically a library, which is a little bit of a kludge. It's 60,000 is a big number. I don't think anyone would ever run out of codes, but it's not the best approach to have. If you can generate them dynamically, it's a lot better.
One of the great things about ratgdo is it allows you to understand if your garage door is up or down without having to put a tilt sensor or using a reed switch on your garage door. How does this work under the hood? Let's ask the author, Paul.
You can turn that you can decode these signals. So the door actually sends all of its commands and its status, it broadcasts it back on the same serial connection. So you have bidirectional, you just hook up 3 wires and you can tell where the door is. You can control the door, you can control the light, you can lock it, unlock it, all that stuff. So it's a good system in that, you can do everything with very little wiring. It's just bad that it was obfuscated. It was made difficult to work with. But
when I was sort of troubleshooting my system, looking at the logs, with ratgdo, right? If you want to look at the raw logs, you have to hook it up to your laptop, your desktop, right, and open up that web viewer to get the logs on there. There is another fork of your project using ESP Home that actually has a web serial output logs and a little bit more polished web GUI. So just sort of curious on your thoughts on that.
Well, I think it's actually really a positive thing in terms of seeing open source work in a successful way. So I'm not writing this type of software isn't my day job. I'm a hobbyist. I've been doing it a long time, so I'm not a total amateur. But there are people that are much more adept at it, and basically the solution there, I chose not to use ESP Home because it locks you into ESP Home. I don't want to have to use ESP Home, and I didn't want other people to have to use ESP Home. And it's really hard to support ESP Home and have a standalone solution on the same code base. I think I know how to do it. When I started out, solving that problem was not at the top of the list. I wanted to solve the problem of controlling the door first. So down the road, I think it would be ideal to have one code base that can generate the various binaries to support the different the different ecosystems. And the ESP Home version that they spun up is, if you look at the code, it's like incompatible with, like it can't be a branch of the project because the implementation is quite different. It's all the same. It's performing the same actions. It's just structured differently. So anyway, I think I know how to sort of turn the ratgdo software into a library that can be implemented in various containers and be able to keep all the versions in sync and make it a little bit more flexible that way. But for the meantime, I mean, it's great because there were people that wanted the ESP Home version, and my time's limited. I didn't, and I definitely didn't want to create a separate fork of it that I had to maintain 2 versions myself either. That wasn't. It's kind of a problematic.
So when I got it, one of the first things I have, one I'm actually going to be using in my hand here is, these ESP 8266s, right? You have to solder them together. The shield board has your project name on it. Are you soldering these things yourself? Is there somewhere in China that these get sent out to? How do you, I guess, how much time or effort is put into actually doing this? Are you doing that work? Just sort of curious.
So there's a lot of surface mount components. You have various options. If there's any hobbyists out there who are interested in doing something like this, you can design a board and send it to a fab, and they'll make, like 5 copies is usually the minimum for them. Send these different fabs and a specially formatted file, and they can generate a printed circuit board for you. Some of them do assembly, and they'll actually assemble components on the board for you. And so for this project, because I knew I was going to sell a few of them after I gauged the interest initially, and I went with surface mount components, which are really tiny. They're not through hole, so they actually sit on top of the board, and they're soldered in place. So you need a pick and place machine really to do that right if you want to have any sort of mass production that's reliable. So I solder the through hole components myself, and those are all hand soldered at the moment. And but the board comes with all the circuitry and the surface mount components ready to go.
What's the response been so far? I mean, A lot of positive stuff on GitHub, but I don't. Do you think it's I feel like a lot of people don't even know about it yet. Hopefully, this video demoing it off, I think a lot more people will pick it up. I mean, overall, just for anybody, it's super easy to set up. In the past, maybe you had to solder something on your own. I know that in the past, a lot of people were soldering to garage door remotes to get those working. This is none of that. You're just basically putting in 3 wires and calling it a day. So what's the response been like so far?
The response has been really good. There are a few issues which I'm working through. One of those has to do with these hybrid openers. There are certain openers that are labeled, they're marketed as Security Plus 2.0, but they use the Security 1.0 protocol on the wired remote, which I had no idea they did that. It's so weird. There's so many variations in the model numbers and the scheme that they have in all these various models of openers. I can't follow. I don't understand. I'd love for somebody to explain it, but it's hard to know like what really is a compatible opener. And right now I'm finding that there's these jack shaft openers which mount to your wall, and they turn the jack shaft of the door instead of using a belt or a chain. Those have this weird. It's a weird hybrid. They still sell them of today. You can still buy, but they work with old style wall buttons, and I'm going to add support for those. So there are some people that have bought it. They bought it under the impression that it was going to work because it says Security Plus 2.0 on their opener, and then they get it, and we find out it doesn't work. And I have to say that they've all been extremely patient. They're all really encouraging me and motivating me and being very patient, waiting for a solution. And I promise to get something that works.
What else do you have planned for the project? Anything that you have next that you're thinking about or you've been wanting to implement?
Easy to install. And while I agree with you, I also disagree, because in order to use this, there's a technology stack there. You have to be capable of setting up that you want to set up. So it really limits the solution to like the hardcore home automation enthusiast. And while that's great, I'm one of them, right? I'd like to broaden the. I'd like to be able to give this to my uncle or a bunch. He's got a bunch of these door openers, and they don't have a home server. They don't even own a computer, I don't think. I mean, most of the people that I know that are kind of in that demographic, they're using a smart device. They have tablets, but the desktop computer or the concept of a home server is not really something they're going to want to do or would know how to do. So my goal is I want to try to support HomeKit native, so that you power the thing up, you plug it in, and your iOS device can discover it. And I like HomeKit from that perspective that it all works locally. It doesn't require a cloud connection. It does if you want to. You need a gateway if you want to be able to use it away from home. But if you want to just be able to use it while you're in your house, like you hop in bed and you want to close the garage door because you left it open without having to get up and walk out to the garage, you can put the phone and see the status and close it. That doesn't require anything special. And if you want to be able to do it, from work or wherever, you can do that if you have, an Apple TV or a HomePod or whatever the other ecosystem devices are that act as a gateway. And it puts all that security portion of it on Apple, which makes it easy for your average consumer. Obviously, Google Home and Alexa are hugely popular, probably more popular than HomeKit. And I will support those at some point. It's just a matter of learning them, because they're not something that I'm personally interested in house, although I recognize they're really, really popular and there are a lot of people who like them. So I'd like to support all 3 at some point, but I think I'm going to start with HomeKit just because that's where my personal interest lies.
And Paul, last question is, what can the community do to support you besides, buying your boards? I don't know if you have any, contributions or anything else the community can do to support the project.
So buying boards is like really the first thing, because that I've spent quite a bit of money buying other logic boards and testing, and it's enabled me to buy used garage door openers left and right. And I've got a pile of them now. I don't know what I'm gonna do with, but I want to keep going in terms of supporting other types of door openers, not just Security 4.0, but I have an old Genie door opener. I'm going to try to make this project work with any door opener, whether it's encrypted or not. And certainly I think the next one that will be supported are the older Chamberlain door openers that use the 1.0 or whatever they call it, but it's a different protocol. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, or maybe even a better thing, would be to help spread the word, because I don't advertise. I think advertising is necessary, but also I'm one person. I don't have a lot of time to do it. I don't want to come off as nagging, like promoting my own product on Reddit or on, the HomeAssistant forum, or Facebook, whatever people are using, social media in general. So I think anyone who has it and likes it, if they are in a home automation type social media forum of some kind, to let others know about it and their experience with it. So
if you like what you saw in this video, definitely be sure to check out the ratgdo project and support Paul by buying both the ESP device and the shield attached with it. You don't technically have to buy the ESP device itself. You could buy it on your own and solder the pins on there, but I definitely recommend you just buy it from the project itself, because if you're not good at soldering, it's not going to be the most fun. And I'm not just stopping at using ratgdo to open and close my garage door. Be sure to check out my next video, which I talk about integrating ratgdo with a Zigbee relay that's going to control a garage door deadbolt. We really hope everybody enjoyed this video. Until the next time, this is Roger's Tech Talk.